moving on to item 9, our big conversation. Was that? Oh, I missed one. I'm trying to get this done. Sorry, the 8, yes, the Ealing to Cambridge A10 transport. Again, we'll hear the officer presentation. Joint Assembly will debate or question, and then we'll seek agreement for the approach being recommended to the executive. Chris.
I would say that to a great Chief Chair. Very quickly, it's a study that was initiated by GCP. GCP have in the main paid for this. There was some developed contribution. It looks at the corridor from Cambridge, precisely from the A14, going up to Ely. It takes on board the development planned along this arterial route, specifically Waterbeach and Cambridge North East Fringe and Cambridge Science Park. The key outcomes have been that, I don't think this is telling anybody that what they don't already know, but the A10, certainly from Waterbeach to the A14, is already at capacity. We know there's a lot of, as we call, rat running going around other routes to try and find other ways in. So we know it's already at capacity. 79% of the current journeys, I hasten to add, actually emanate outside of that corridor, so they're coming in from Ely and the surrounding areas. And actually, from a Cambridge and a Milton Road point of view, the A14 junction acts as the choke. So actually, what gives a nice steady flow might be too steady for Milton Road, and you know you've got a scheme for that. But it's the A14 that limits the amount of traffic that gets through down to Milton Road. So table 1 in the report outlines the options that the consultants who are McDonald's have come up with. They say regardless of whatever you do on the A10 itself, you've got to get a mode shift, and in fact they're even more precise in terms of the bottom end of the route around the Science Park and the Northern Fringe East, that they're saying that planning approvals need to be looked at to minimise the amount of car use that we get there. But in terms of option 1, they're suggesting significant investment in cycle and pedestrian, a segregated public transport route, and that actually ties in with the presentation you got in from the CAM presentation, a bus-based park and ride development at Waterbeach, relocate the railway station, because that's based on current Waterbeach. Of course, Waterbeach is moving north with all the development that's going on, so actually relocate that to more central of Waterbeach, and then, as I say, this parking constraint. Then you look at the A10, option 2 is improve the junctions, option 3 is just dual the north section from Waterbeach to Ely, option 4 the south section, or option 5 is full dualling, and then you get to option 6, which is build a new road. So what's being proposed here, this is only the initial work. Far more work has got to be done on this. The recommendation here is that the board accepts, subject to what thoughts you may have, the board accepts the report and commends the report to the combined authority. There is an interesting point in 3.14 that actually what's being suggested, because it's a bus route, it's park and ride, it's modal shift, that the combined authority may wish to put option 1 back to GCP to develop, and the combined authority then looks at the A10 itself and any proposals about an alternative to the A10. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of points to this. If you look at the map on page 162, which is the map of the full dual option, you'll see how wiggly the current A10 is. It does concern me that during this road, whether that can be done on the existing alignment or whether you are going to have to divert diverge from this alignment at certain places like Streatham, for example, where you've got a major roundabout and a junction. And whether that has been taken into account in this initial assessment, because it will involve compulsory purchase, it will involve having to buy land, and I wonder whether all that has been taken into account in the cost of this. And my second concern is the fact that this only works if our planning colleagues impose strict parking controls on Cambridge North Fringe and the Science Park. I understand at the moment that that something like near enough 60% of employees on the Science Park use car. Now, if we're going to get that down to biocampus figures, which is around 36–40%, that's going to take a huge modal shift. And my concern is that if we don't impose very strict controls on parking, that all we're going to end up is this dual carriageway is going to deliver gridlock to the Milton interchange and the North Air in Cambridge.
Thank you. Dr. Wells. Clearly there's a lot more work to do and we're at an early stage. I think my disappointment was that it does seem to be a rather road-oriented approach. So under option 1, it says segregated public transport route, and as the map on page 162 illustrates, there is one already. It's called a railway line, which doesn't have water bits on it. The only specifics that I saw in the report about rail were moved to the station, which no doubt makes complete sense. But what could we do by improving the rail service to eliminate the significant commuter traffic from Ely to Cambridge and then from New Waterbeach to Cambridge? We already have, a piece of infrastructure. It doesn't seem to me that, as far as I can see in the study, we've really flogged that for everything we can get out of it before we then resort to roads as additional capacity. That may be my reading of the report, but that's Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk about the detail of this because it's not my patch, but I'm pleased to see that we've overcome our reluctance to acknowledge that actually quite a lot of people are happy to cycle quite long distances. Some couple of years ago we were very reluctant to put in anything other than short stretches of cycleway. So seeing a proposed cycleway running along the rail line from Ely all the way to Cambridge is to be welcomed because we know that people will cycle it. What I hope to see in future iterations of this is branches going out which connects people in the villages along that line into the cycleway. On the other bit, is that Greenway one? There's 3 branches there linking into it. It'd be a terrible shame if we had a cycleway going from Ely to Cambridge, but people in all the villages along the route weren't able to easily and safely access it. Bear in mind, we're not just talking about, the likely cyclists, school children and families and so on. So I realise this is early, but I would welcome that for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Oh, right then, thank you. Yes, well, I have studied this very closely because it is in my patch, and I'd like to draw your attention to page 176, which elaborates on the concerns that Councillor Williams made, and in particular the second part of the second paragraph of 285. Moreover, it is clear that major development cannot continue to be delivered with a business-as-usual approach to transport planning, which frequently does little to discourage the frequent use of private motor vehicles. And it goes on, it doesn't mince its words, this report. To avoid the problematic impacts described above in this document, development must in future seek very carefully to minimise external vehicle trip generation through maximising trip internalisation. Provide significantly lower levels of carbon. It means that where you have a new development, you try to get people to move. Sorry about the technicalities there. Provide significantly lower levels of car parking than has traditionally been provided, particularly at employment locations. Promote a site-wide approach to car parking management to reduce the need for significant increases in car parking provision, and promote the use of non-car modes through significant investment in supply-side measures and aggressive travel planning to encourage the required mode shifts. So we have been warned. And going on to page 178, it was full of acronyms, this report. Really, the great benefit of acronyms that aren't explained in the text is that you have to press 3 buttons on your machine and go to Google. So at 3.2, this NRTS, that prompted my interest. Anyway, NRTS is the National Roads Telecommunications Services. And National Roads Telecommunications Services, and looking into this in a little bit more detail, I found out that the system is complex enough to allow a national scheme of road pricing, possibly using radio frequency identification tags. The cost of the project, which was £490 million in 2005, was described by the Association of British Drivers as being an awful lot to spend just for signs saying that motorways are closed and that you should not drink and drive. And that puts a date on it, I think, because drinking and driving is a bit passé now, except in sort of Christmas time, and these days it's don't text and drive. But anyway, I thought that was quite significant, the possibility of a national road pricing scheme. There we are.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Andy Williams.
I'm speechless. No, I was impressed. So I think one we should welcome some improvements to the north of the county, the north of Cambridge. I think we've had a lot of focus on the west and the south, and it's about time we should put some focus on the north. And it's for good reasons, but it's nice to now see something going towards the north. And I thought the report was pretty good, actually. It was lots of different things in lots of different ways. And actually, for once, I did think the dualling perhaps was a strong option, because of the argument made that a lot of the cars coming down there aren't actually going to Cambridge. And I've worried before about our Cambridge-centric view that assuming everybody in the world wants to travel from somewhere out of Cambridge, bang into the middle of Cambridge. And I won't go on about radial routes yet again. Oh dear. So I guess I was in a query because I'm not an expert, and it sounds like the councillors who are experts don't know either. What on earth is a radical parking constraint, even though Tim mentioned what it is? Do we actually have the ability to do that? Because we've upset something else which is going to, and we don't have the ability to apply that radical parking constraint, we are heading in a bad place. And then just more of an observation, I guess I was going to mention it in the massive rush transport. I hadn't even thought about the idea that we were going to have, perhaps it was to John Wells' point, we're going to have a train line, we're going to have a segregated bus route, and we're going to have a dual carriageway. And presumably the next phase of work will think about that, because won't the train take away? It's the only place, in mass transport, where we seem to have a railway line and the rapid mass transport side by side. So presumably they'll cannibalise each other's services, and therefore it seems a bit strange not to have the park and ride for the segregated bus right next to the relocated station. It seems strange that you haven't consolidated all those things in a single place, at least conceptually, because conceptually to me, the idea is to get down there, not to get to a certain point south of Ely and go, which one should I go for, the blue one or the red one or the purple one? So perhaps it's just conceptually think about that.
Can I just touch on that, Karen, if I may? Because if you look at the map of Waterbeach Village and the way the railway line goes on one side of Waterbeach Newtown, the A10 is on the other side, and so putting the park and rides in the same place actually could cause a lot of difficulties locally, but I'm sure Chris will get into that more.
Councillor Couplet, I've got one more after that. Councillor Chamberlain.
Oh, I've had mine in there.
Sorry, no. Councillor Kavanagh, this one's expanding rapidly. Councillor Couplet.
Mine's more observations and other comments are coming from people that I know in the area. One is, one comment that's been made to me is the new A10 upgrading is going to be the old A14. And what they mean by that is there's an awful lot of side roads, village roads, God knows what other roads coming on to the A10, and how they get. One of the problems with the A14 is you've got a load of traffic coming on without proper feed-ins, and all that. That's one concern that some of the people have got around there. Another option that they did talk about is actually drawing down to the park and ride and stopping at that point, not just past the park and ride, but down to the park and ride, and having an access from the park and ride, head the cars off. And just exactly why are you moving the station? Because you also have it centralised. On this map it looks like it's particularly at one end. and there's been comments about can that be justified and why it's actually being moved.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Chairman, thank you. I do believe that somehow or other that park and ride and the railway station do need to be brought closer together. I think the important point to recognise is that a lot of people who are travelling to work on the north end of Cambridge use their cars because I don't think it's actually a reasonable alternative presently. The station at Cambridge North does now provide access for people to use that to get to the science park. And if only we could get them out of their cars earlier on, I think that more people would be inclined to use that. And that's the only way I think to get them over the shift. Certainly, the A10 at the moment is so unreliable, and there are so many accidents, and we have had not only accidents but branches coming down this morning. It is incredibly unreliable presently. We have to do something. I believe that this is a very good starting point and we should get the work done.
Thank you. And last but not least, Councillor Cameron.
Oh yeah, I just following on from Councillor Smith's comment about the cycling. It's good to see that on page 198 where there's talk of the quick wins. It includes early implementation of the cycling measures. And the mention of the Greenway, the Waterbeach one, remind me of comments made by councillors in the vicinity of Ely who've approached me as the cycle champion, saying, why can't we have a Greenways network around Ely? And I think this could be an opportunity here, a quick win one, to look at having a kind of network of greenways in the hinterland of the A10, coming up from Ely and so on, to joining up places like Sutton, Little Downham, Queen Adelaide, lovely named place, and so on, because there's a clear kind of suppressed demand north of Cambridge for people to get onto safe cycleways, and I think we should sort of build it in more strongly into this report and what we hope to get out of the initiative.
Thank you. Over to you. Yes.
Okay, perhaps to start before I answer, this is a report that clearly strategic needs to go to the combined authority. They will be considering this, so a number of these issues will be issues that they will consider. I mean, we do make the point, as I mentioned earlier in the report, that we feel GCP are in a very good position to deliver on option one, which is the modal, cycling, walking, the transport corridor. So we feel that would be good to come back and we could continue to develop that. But in terms of the roadworks, I think it's fair to say definitely that would be the combined authority and their decision as to how they progress it and go forward. Once we know, it probably will come back here for information and you will have your views again. In terms of Councillor Williams, shielding on the existing, this is just looking at high level, and those sort of things will be looked at when you start actually developing it, whether or not you can smooth out this. It's all to do with land take, as you rightly say, and so on. But yes, I would expect that to happen. No, it's not in the assessment. It purely and simply is, if you have a dual carriageway from A to B, what will be the impact? So that would have to be further work. In terms of the planning side, Stephen Kelly's been actively involved in this from both the South Cambs and Cambridge point of view, so he's been directly involved and he's very keen. We talked about the planning issues and this restraint on planning on cars. He's very clear about that and he will be looking to apply that, but you need this report behind it to demonstrate why there is a need for it. So he is already looking at applying this with anything that comes on, particularly in terms of the science park and any future development of the science park. So he is fully sighted on that. In terms of the rail frequency, and you're right, we do need to sweat the existing assets as much as possible. Part of the problem is, of course, is rail pass on the existing railway line. And to be fair, and it answers another point, which actually was drawn out in a different way, but of course railways are even worse than buses or trams or tram buses. The railways go from station to station and you can't get off in between. So if you're not going, we are good in that we've got Cambridge North now, which facilitates the Science Park, but if you want to go to the centre of Cambridge, and I have to say I'm old-fashioned, the centre to me is the centre, which is the marketplace and the Guildhall and so on, then you've got a nice kilometre hike back from the station. So I think there is an issue about looking at more than one option, but each option will be costed out. In fact, within the report, you have got the cost benefits, and they range from anything from about 2.5, depending on the options, up to about 3.5. So those are actually already in the report. So it will be on the benefits that we get out of it. In terms of cycling in and connection to the villages, definitely, because of course it's people out of the villages that then feed into the road or feed elsewhere. So yes, we will take that on board. Officers are here, they'll take that on board. Yes, Tim, I'd seen about the NRTS and the announcement. They've actually delayed doing anything about it at the moment, but talk about subtly implementing something without anybody knowing. So I've dealt with the radical parking constraint, where they want to go to. Those were all yours, Andy. I believe I've dealt with those. I mean, the key here is the mass rapid transit has actually come along since this study was commissioned. So now the key is we've got to integrate it all. So I think obviously that is what we'll definitely do. Chair, you've raised about, sorry, Kevin, Councillor Cuffler, you've raised the question of too many junctions, and yes, there is a danger of that, and yes, officers are alive to that. That was actually mentioned in a meeting I was at, that there's a real danger that we end up with the same situation as the A14, so we are alive to that. Moving the park and ride to the station, I'm sure it's something officers will look at. The issue on park and rides is, as drivers, we are very fickle. We very rarely go in the opposite direction or even to one side of the direction we're travelling in. So actually to pull them all the way through a new residential site in Waterbeach all the way to the station to park up is something that some drivers would not do. I'm not saying we couldn't make them do it, but some drivers wouldn't. But it is something we will consider. So that was the bringing park and ride together, and then there was the issue around greenways and around Ely. Obviously, from the GCP point of view, our remit is South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge. There is nothing stopping the board deciding that there is benefit in looking outside. That actually reduces traffic flows coming in, so that may be something for the future in terms of greenways, in talking to adjacent authorities, or even the CA itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No concerning that. The Vice Chair who was going to sum that up.
Good. Well, there was some disappointment, I suppose, that this seemed to be very much a road-centred report, although it was acknowledged that the need had been established for significant improvements in the road. And if it's going to be dual, there was some concern that the realignment could be potentially problematical in terms of land take and compulsory purchase. There was a strong acknowledgement that these proposals are predicated on severe parking restriction at Cambridge Science Park and around Cambridge Northern Fringe East. Have we exhausted opportunities for making better use of the railway? There was a welcome for the acknowledgement that quite a few people are willing to cycle longer distances, and indeed a suggestion that there should be a greenways network centred on Ely. Some anxiety that having two public transport corridors more or less parallel to each other may compete in some way or another. And if I could now take us to paragraph 314 on page 119, I know Chris touched on this. But the recommendation to the board is, of course, to endorse the recommendation and pass them on to the combined authority. But this was, a report that was largely commissioned by Greater Cambridge Partnership, and I would like to see us play a part going forward. So there's a reference there to the possibility that the Greater Cambridge Partnership could take forward the proposals identified in option 1. And I'm wondering, Chairman, if we could perhaps firm that up a bit somehow, if members agree that
By
that's,
approving the recommendation.
that's a good idea. We're sort of getting nods around the table.
Does anybody think that that's a bad idea? No, I think that covers that. Okay. So, taking that into account, so that will we will put these recommendations to the board, and as with previous items, all your comments that have gone to Chris and will form part of the report that goes to the board's next meeting. Thank you. Moving on, item 9, which I thought I got through earlier. Sorry. Our big conversation. So we're going to hear the presentation, hear the officer presentation in relation